Welcome to Immortal Works Flash Fiction Friday, episode 46. Today we have a double feature. That's right, 2 stories from 2 different authors, read by John Grundvig. Our first story, The Duel by James Wymore. You have offended my honor, you pus-filled boil. I will have the satisfaction of a duel. Here and now, choose your weapon. He pointed at me with a long, crooked finger, while the rest of his fingers clutched the glove he'd just used to slap my face. The sweaty smell offended me more than the sting in my cheek. I looked over his fashionable clothes and neat hair. Fit and athletic, he'd beat me at any contest of strength. I might get even odds with pistols, but I preferred familiar ground. Words. I smiled. What? This is to the death! You think you can talk me into dying? A few dozen people had gathered to look at the action. A few of them smirked. I'm serious. Whoever insults the other best wins. Loser dies. They can judge. I put one hand out to indicate the audience. They looked shocked at being involved, then glad of gaining some power. This is ridiculous! He stomped a few steps away. Chicken, I said. You can't keep your woman happy. You're probably too simple for a little contest of insults. I'll kill you twice for that, pig! He pulled a knife. Really? That's the best you've got? Clearly you bored her into my arms, you fashion victim. I'll cut your heart out! The crowd began to boo and tip their thumbs down. Looks like you lost already. I shrugged, pulled a small pistol from my pocket, and put a bullet through his forehead. Now our second story is Schrödinger's Prodigy by Kevin L. Nielsen. Look, I said, leaning forward and resting my elbows on the desk before me. The handcuffs on my wrists clinked against the dented wood as I brought the rest of my arm down onto the table. The reality we walk is a lie. Well, if I'm going for total honesty here, it's both a truth and a lie. I paused there and glanced up at the officer, who was looking at me as if I had been puffing on a magic dragon for the better part of 3 years. Idiot! As if the youngest PhD graduate in a century would need artificial stimuli to enhance anything. What was there to improve? I'll try to keep this simple, all right? Each choice we make creates a certain dichotomy of possible outcomes, all dependent upon whether our choices are mutually exclusive or not. When they are, each possible outcome creates a new reality as tangible and present as our own. I paused again and gave the officer a level look, which he returned with an infuriatingly blank stare, fingers poised and unmoving on the keyboard. How much more simple could I get? I made a quick study of the man. The officer wore a green uniform with silvery buttons, which I noted with only mild curiosity through my annoyance. I thought all policemen wore those stupid blue or black uniforms, but I really didn't have much first-hand knowledge, and life had always taught me not to rely on anything I didn't experience firsthand. Narrowing my eyes, I continued, gesturing for him to resume his typing. Well, such mutual exclusivity simply would not do. I was convinced there was a way for our divergent realities to cross paths. So I went to MIT, got degrees in advanced particle, applied, and theoretical physics, and proceeded to work out a method to travel between the various realities. You're 17, kid. The look on the officer's square, slack-jawed face reminded me of an ape I'd seen at a museum once. He scratched his bearded chin in a motion that only cemented the comparison. At least the ape had mastered using hand tools. What does the chronological passage of time have to do with this? I raised my hands. I would have only raised one, but they were connected by the cuffs, and pointed an admonishing finger at him. Don't interrupt. Anyway, as I was saying, I invented this machine, went to one of the other realities parallel, but not too distant from our own, and had a good romp there. I frowned slightly, recalling the process and suppressing a mild wince at the memory that surfaced. That's really not giving it justice. The transition between realms. That was a beast, let me tell you. I mean, have you ever had to pull out of a dive in a fighter jet at Mach 1, pulling over 3 Gs and then tried to stand up? The officer's expression changed from incredulity and skepticism to downright confusion. I hadn't even gone into anything specific. No wonder this man was in a dead-end service job. He never would have survived MIT, even in a pithy, ignorant field like engineering. Yeah, me neither, but it probably feels something like that. Anyway, the me that exists there is what you'd probably call a party animal, so I enjoyed living his life for a bit while he was otherwise occupied. I smiled, thinking of the good times. It almost made me regret missing out on the bashes in college. Almost. You see, I continued, apparently you have to switch places when you cross realities. He was here while I was there. Let me tell you, that must have been interesting for him. But anyway, to get back, we had to trade places again and return to the way things were before. He didn't want to go. It's all very A Tale of Two Cities. The officer stared at me blankly. He'd forgotten to write down the last few lines, so I helped myself to his keyboard and did it for him. Doing so proved a bit of a challenge around the cuffs, but nothing compared to inventing a reality-altering machine. And I still managed to do it faster than he would have managed. I also took the liberty of fixing all his typos. I can't stand the stupid blue and red squiggly underlines. The precinct was so archaic that their word processor had orange and purple lines for spelling and grammar errors. How prosaic. Anyway, he didn't want to go back, so I had to persuade him. Unfortunately, my persuasion resulted in some sort of cosmic schism when he, the other me, that is, died. I'm still looking into it. And that, officer, is why I had to kill myself. If anything, you can list it as a successful suicide. He just sat there looking stupid, mouth half open to show yellow teeth. Smoker. I sighed, leaning forward and typing the rest of his report. Idiot. So now that you have my statement, would you mind taking off the cuffs so I can go home? I had things I needed to do. Cosmic schisms and all that. Seriously, was this guy so stupid that he thought it really was as simple as I'd made it sound? That's what I get for being modest. I hate stupid people. We're still waiting on your folks, kid. The officer scratched his chin and pulled open one of the drawers on his desk. He fished around in it for a minute and came up with a rather floridly packaged thing of gum. Care for some chewy, kid? Chewy? Is that a new type of gum? I made a face and held up a hand, which had the effect of bringing up my other hand as well. I think I'll pass. If it tastes anything like how your breath smells, I'm better off without it. Anyway, I sued for emancipation from my parents years ago. I'm my own dependent now. So off with the cuffs then. The muscles in the officer's square jaw tightened as he ground his teeth together and the vein near his temple pulsed like some maniacal clock. Good. He should be mad. As mad and frustrated as he was making me. I needed to go home and check my instruments. Make sure the schism had closed properly and that the machine I'd used was still viable. Obviously it needed some tweaks, a little refinement and precision testing, but the prototype worked like a dream. I had traveled between worlds and returned safely back to my own. The sound of metal clinking and some motion at my wrists pulled me out of my thoughts. I do that sometimes, get lost in my own head while the world continues on around me unobserved. Yeah, it's boring out there. My mind is a much more interesting place. Well, you're free to go, kid, the officer said, pulling the unlocked cuffs free of my wrist and pocketing them. You need to be back here on the 17th to see the judge, but that's it. Well, I'll certainly look forward to doing that, I said, keeping my voice dry. I recommend some better breath mints next time, or a different cologne. The officer gave me a strange look and adjusted his green uniform. You lay off the sauce, kid, all right? I rolled my eyes. One of the few facial expressions I had mastered at such a young age that I did it unconsciously still. This one, however, was completely intentional. Catch you on the flip side then, buddy. I waved at him with 2 fingers, an expression usually preferred by small girls, cheerleaders, and 80s wannabes. In my case, it was appropriate simply judging by the way the officer's massive unibrow rose almost into his receding hairline. It was an easy walk to the door, then out into the dark night streets beyond. Like most police stations, this one had a set of steps as wide as the walls leading up to it. I skipped down them, ignoring the people milling about in the police cars that lined the streets on each side of the stairs. At the base of the steps, I pulled up a city map in my head and calculated the fastest way to get back home. I could call a taxi or walk. And after a half second of indecision, I decided to walk. It wasn't that far. I really didn't want to waste money on having someone else take the long route around the city. I strode along the sidewalk, breathing in the chill night air with my hands thrust down into my pockets. The night had never bothered me much. Only stupid people thought the night was any different than the day. True, mankind's darker nature came out more easily during the blackness of night, but it was always there, even in daylight, hidden just beneath the surface. I'd gone about a block before I noticed the street lamps were different. Red light? Why were the lamps red? A prank, maybe? I racked my brain trying to recall when the local high school got out. It had been so long ago for me, I couldn't remember immediately. No, not a senior prank then. They had 2 more months to go yet. Something about it tugged at my subconscious, so I let it go for now, trusting my mind to work itself out, let me know when it discovered what was wrong. I shook my head, allowing my conscious mind to return to directing my walk back to my house. A man passed on the other side of the street, and I noticed him out of the corner of my eye, walking a dog, a purple dog. Purple. Understanding washed over me like the heat from a sudden exothermic reaction. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving it pale enough to almost glow in the darkness. I couldn't have. He didn't. I spluttered, so stunned I actually gave voice to my thoughts instead of leaving them in my mind where they belonged. I didn't, did I? I broke into a run. Now, I may be a nerd, but I also pride myself on my physical condition. The buildings and streets passed by in a blur. An old man out in his yard yelled something at me, but I ignored him. I reached the front door to my small house in a rush, panting. Sweat beaded on my forehead and ran down my cheek. I scrabbled in my pocket for my keys, pulling them out in a jumble of clanking metal. The key didn't fit the lock. No, I didn't, did I? The thought reverberated in my mind. I swung around the back of the house and checked the windows. One was open. Pushing it up, I crawled inside and slammed it shut behind me. I didn't even wait for the lights to come on. I dashed up to my room, eyes immediately searching out the dimensional rift device I'd created as I burst through the door. The light was on in the room. The device was gone. Instead, a piece of paper sat on the floor where the device had been. I walked over to it, mind numb at the implications of what had just occurred and how I hadn't noticed before. I picked it up and read the words written in my handwriting there on the page. Dear me, well, you, really. I told you I didn't want to go back. You didn't listen. So I had to push you into another dimension. It was the only logical choice, really. The us that was here is now in my old world, and I'm in yours. Sorry about the whole killing yourself thing. It was a byproduct of me coming back to steal the device. Some version of us died somewhere. Anyway, the important thing is that I have the device here with me. I'll send you some notes from time to time. If you're lucky, I may even come back for you one day. I doubt it, but there's a chance still. Somewhere. Me. Also you, but really just me. I stood there for almost a minute, simply staring at the note, my mind unable to wrap itself around where I had miscalculated. I let the note slip from my fingers and drift toward the floor. It hit the ground and settled there, seeming almost as if it belonged there. For a moment I didn't know what to do. Then I laughed. I simply threw back my head and laughed at the sheer incredulity of it. It was a setback for sure, but not one I couldn't overcome. Well played, good sir. Well played. Thanks for listening to Immortal Works Flash Fiction Friday. If you have a flash fiction story between 250 and 1,500 words to submit, you can do it on our website at www.immortal-works.com. And don't forget to like, rate, share, or tattoo the name of our podcast on your rear end, however you can share it. Thanks.